Welcome back to Beyond the Hot Flash podcast, everybody. I'm so excited. Today's conversation, we are tackling one of the biggest and most misunderstood topics in modern health. We have with us the lovely Julie Duffy Dillon. She's an author, a speaker, a registered dietitian, a PCOS expert, and a certified food behavior expert. So Julie is really known for powerful work helping people escape diet culture. And as she says on her own podcast, she's here to help us ditch the cookie cutter approaches, expose the lies that society feeds us, and rewrite the rules around food, eating, and our bodies. So today we're going to dive deep into a topic that affects millions, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And we're going to explore how we can find peace, nourishment, and body trust regardless of a diagnosis. Julie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, awesome. I know very little about PCOS. I'm excited to dive deep into all of this stuff today. And I think there are a lot of people who need this information. So I'm so happy we're doing this together. Can we talk about your byline, ditch cookie cutter approaches and expose the lies that society feeds us? What is the most pervasive lie you see people struggling with?
Well, especially with PCOS, but I think all of us, is that weight is the cause of everything, basically, and then we can control it. Now, I think there are so many different variables that are not accounted for in that kind of advice. Yeah.
You know, I've been having such amazing conversations with different people on the podcast talking about this diet culture thing. And I must tell you, it's been an absolute mic drop for me. I realized how pre-programmed I am. You know, if you're having thoughts around, oh my gosh, I cannot ever eat carbs, or I can't eat this Kit Kat, or I can't eat this and that, it becomes such a restrictive thing. So for me, I'm learning all the new ways. It's not just a protein thing. I used to do keto for 2 years. So I am in the space of turning 50 this year and having amazing help from people like you, Julie, and many others of just around how do we have a good relationship with food. So for you as a registered dietitian, I mean, how did you transition from traditional nutrition models to becoming this advocate for intuitive eating? You know, you talk about HAES, health at every size. I had to read that in my notes. What are those principles? Tell me about it.
Oh my gosh, you've asked like this question that we could spend like the next 6 months talking about. And welcome to 50. I turned 50 this year myself. So it's a great decade. You know, as a dietitian, I think for a lot of us dietitians, it's very easy to see how harmful diets are, because we are a group of people that spend an hour at least with clients each time we meet with them and combing through every food thing, every movement, and then also how much pain and shame and blame each person is carrying. So after about 3 years of hearing people try diet after diet and also helping people recover from eating disorders, I found that the diets were the thing that were harming people, and it also wasn't working. And at first I was told by my colleagues, oh, you know, they're just non-compliant, or they're just not trying hard enough. But after, I don't know, 3 years saying the same thing over and over again, I found like maybe I am the common denominator here. Like maybe it's me. And it made me really consider how like just feeding information to someone is really not helpful, because, you know, something that I'm also trained as a therapist. So something that I know is that like we're human beings, like we have relationships with people that involve food. We have dynamics that we're not like a petri dish, you know? And so maybe keto is something that can help change some lab values over a 4-week study when they look at like 11 people, which there's a PCOS study that is exactly that model. But yet that doesn't mean that actually translates into like real life. And I'm someone that wants everybody to enjoy food. I find so much joy in connecting over food, especially in midlife. It's such a pleasurable thing to be able to like have a slow meal with someone and just hang out and have fun and laugh, maybe have some tequila there too. And so that's a healthy thing to be able to have relationships. And so having your food relationship to be able to also help with that, I think, is something that's really important as a dietitian.
Yeah, I love that point about the tequila and socializing around food. I think it's key, because think throughout the generations, you would sit with family and dine and take time and enjoyment with not only people that you love. It's just this whole nourishment of the socializing, but also the food and the nutrition.
Yes.
And you're so right. You can be in that situation where you have this diet culture of like, well, I'm going to sit there, but I'm not going to eat X, Y, Z. And you have this resentment. There's a lot of stuff to talk about and unpack in that concept, I know. So let's talk a little bit about the core difference between, in your opinion, we talk about dieting and intuitive eating.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, where should we start? There's so much. Yeah. Well, I think it's important to consider why we don't trust our bodies. Like we have all these innate ways of taking care of ourselves that we don't even think about. Like the two of us are breathing right now, our heart's beating, and we're not trying to control it. We also go to the bathroom when we need to go. Our body just tells us. We don't say like, oh, I can only go to the bathroom 3 times a day. And if I go more than that, that means I'm bad. No, like it's something that we just like trust. And when we're born, it's the same. Like we have this innate ability to take care of ourselves, and then the world gets in the way of it. And so getting back to that, how that's what my book is about, is really helping people to get back to like how their body specifically, like your own innate ways of taking care of yourself. And everyone is different. I'm someone who I have like really strong interoceptive awareness. So like if I feel like the slightest twinge of hunger, I'm going to notice it. But then I have people in my life who are not like that. And it's more, oh, if I don't eat every 2 or 3 hours, I start to get hangry. And so that's their way of taking care of their body and getting back to that instead of like, oh, here's this diet. Just don't trust hunger. Don't trust your fullness or your satiety, or maybe you're just thirsty. You're not hungry. Like all these things that we're supposed to go through first before we can actually trust our hunger. And I know for a lot of people who are new to this kind of conversation, they feel a lot of fear with it. Like, well, what if I can't stop eating? This is scary. And yeah, it's scary, but also like that's a repair process. And for many people, it can take a good year of like working to mend that system, that knowing that you were born with and getting reacquainted with it. So then it becomes something that is energizing, but also, again, brings back that satisfaction and pleasure.
I had a terrible tummy bug. I was in Costa Rica. It takes me like a whole month to recover because I've taken 2 years to fix my gut biome, and I felt fantastic and amazing. But I am really susceptible to things like that. If a tummy bug's going around, guess who's getting it?
That stinks.
So that's my weak spot, right? It's amazing how intuitive I think our amazing bodies are. Yeah. All I'm craving when I'm like that, bananas, dry toast. Our bodies know what they need. Sometimes it requires a Kit Kat and 4 of them. Should we be listening to that? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think that's something, like we should listen to it. And also sometimes the foods we crave are more than just like the nutrients we need in that moment. Sometimes it's something else. And, something that I say that can be quite controversial in some settings, especially settings with other dietitians, is like, sometimes we do have a craving that's purely emotional. And I think we should be okay with emotional eating. Like, especially in the US where I live, it's a really hard time. And there's also, there's a lot of instability and food insecurity. And so if you're finding a way to cope with the moment by eating a few extra Kit Kats, then you are coping. Like I want to give you a high five. Like, this is great. And legalizing that and helping people to just add it to their toolbox is another way to help in hard moments, I think is really important. But I will also say the microbiome, I'm so glad you opened up that Pandora's box, because part of also what we know about our relationship with food is that when we don't eat enough, like you mentioned keto earlier, if we're taking out whole food groups, that can also do really long-term harm to our microbiome. And in midlife, that may show up then in more inflammation and things like that. So eating enough to me is like always the most important, whether it's Kit Kats or I don't know, keto balls or whatever people are eating when they're eating keto, and having that frequency. And like when you had the stomach bug, having the bananas and the toast, like giving yourself enough food in the way that was like the most like, I don't know. I can appreciate that. That was probably like the most satisfying because it was safer, you know, and your body was like, I don't think I can get harmed by this.
Yes,
so
exactly.
it's stabilizing, and it kept your blood sugar even and all that. And it helped your GI tract get food again. Like that's something that helps your microbiome recover. Yeah.
For me, it's very incredibly liberating to hear yourself and many other of the podcasts say, you can have that Kit Kat, because the minute you say no, big problem for me. Then I want 4. It's the brain, and it's ridiculous. But when we allow that freedom, my chocolates will lie in the house for the first time in many years. Do you know, like that food noise, like I know it's there. I can't go to bed until I've finished them, or I can't study until I know those chocolates that I need to finish them. And it's this constant thing of like, I really need it. But when I give myself the liberty and the freedom to say, it's okay. You use the word legal. I love that, because it does feel illegal. It feels wrong. It's a bad food. It's so liberating for me to know that I can have it. And you know what? Tomorrow I actually would have it, and the next day I don't feel like it. That's what that good relationship is for me personally with food, you know, to say it's okay. So,
right. Yeah. And I would add to that, there's this really interesting side to our relationship with food and food behavior, where living in a society where diets are such normal eating that we forget about how our body can have this way of knowing. And so when you're new to this, like moving away from diet thing, or you're trying to do intuitive eating or something like that, it can feel really scary. And what I encourage people to do is something called curious nutrition experiments, where if we can use Kit Kats, I mean, can they sponsor our episode? I think that'd be great.
I agree. Totally.
I love Kit Kats. But like, let's say Kit Kats are on your mind and your brain is having this constant chatter, like the Kit Kats are in the cupboard right now. I can go have them. But then you check in with yourself and you're like, I'm not even hungry, but it's just this constant like obsession with it. One of the best things you can do is 2 things: is give yourself permission. Like we were saying, like it's okay to eat it. Like there's nothing bad is going to happen unless you're like allergic to those Kit Kats or something. But like nothing, there's not going to be this like all or nothing experience from it. And like, what's going on? Like what could be behind it, and be really curious about it. And I make it sound so simple to do that, but I think like trying to be non-judgmental and curious about it is something that takes a long time. But that craving can come from, it was a really stressful day and I didn't have time to eat enough at lunch, or it could be I've been sleeping really bad, and so my body's trying to keep me awake to get through the last few hours. You know, like I put the kids to bed and I still have hours of work still to do or something. Or it could be that I haven't had permission to have Kit Kats and my brain is just fixated on it. So I need to have practice. And so once we can kind of get to like what's happening, then we can experience like, oh, when I have 1 pack of Kit Kats, I feel great. It feels yummy. I feel satisfied. But when I hit that 2nd or 3rd, I start to get a tummy ache. That's really interesting. Like then you can start to like, pivot into like what feels best for you, you know,
the curiousness. I think that's cool. So for me, like I will have the Kit Kat, but there are days where I am happy to share it, because I don't really share Kit Kats. I'm happy to share it with my husband. So I'll have 2 strips and he'll have 2, and I'm happy with that. And I realize that maybe it's actually more pleasurable to have that sweet taste after I've had dinner. And it doesn't actually require 6 bars. It requires 1, you know, so I love that. Let's get into our topic that everybody's here for as well, PCOS.
Yes.
All right. I think it's cool if we can actually just define it. Like, what is PCOS? Simple definition. Help us understand what it is and what are the symptoms.
Yeah, I love this. And I will say, for anyone with PCOS who thinks, oh, the things that we just talked about can't apply, yes, they can. Everything I just said applies to you too. So polycystic ovary syndrome is an endocrine disorder that begins in the brain. Many people think it starts in the ovaries, but it does not. And technically, there's going to be some technical things, you know, there's not a quiz, so don't worry about it too much. But it's technically a diagnosis of exclusion. So in order to get the diagnosis, a doctor has to like rule out all these really rare things. And it's these set of symptoms that result from this hormonal imbalance. You know, again, it's an endocrine disorder. And currently it's diagnosed through something called the Rotterdam criteria, which a person has to get 2 out of the 3 criteria currently in order to get the diagnosis of PCOS. And, you know, in order to get diagnosed, a person has to have irregular or absent ovulation. They, another one of the criteria is signs of high androgens like testosterone. And the third is evidence of multiple immature follicles, also known as cysts, but they're not really cysts, on ultrasound. And so again, a person just needs 2 out of 3 of those. And because you can be diagnosed having different kind of criteria, you may meet someone with PCOS who has completely different symptoms. And that's what leads it to be kind of this like question mark condition for a lot of people, especially the first few years. Like, do I have it? Because it's not this like, there's not like a test currently. They're like researching it right now. But there's no like, I don't know, like if you get the flu and they're like, oh, yep, you test positive for this type of flu. There's no like specific thing like that. So for many people, it can be really confusing. And a lot of that confusion comes from when people are diagnosed, doctors usually tell them either directly or indirectly, like, oh, you know, you gained too much weight, you ate the wrong foods. And by losing weight and eating less carbs and sugar or no carbs and sugar, it'll fix it, which is not true. I hope we can go through all that. And for many people, they just know about the reproductive side of it because they are told, here's birth control, come back when you're trying to get pregnant. But PCOS, besides having this reproductive kind of side to it, there are metabolic and psychological consequences that as a dietitian, I really think are the things we need to pay attention to. I think fertility is really important to pay attention to, but the metabolic side of it is really tough, especially in midlife. And something I'll tell your listeners in particular, since we're talking lots about midlife, is many people are led to believe that their PCOS goes away when their cycle goes away. Yeah. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but it doesn't go away. Like it's something that continues to worsen, especially the metabolic side of it. So yeah. It's a condition that needs a lot more research behind it, a lot more funding. There in the U.S., there's no FDA approved medication for it, so it's a tough one. But it is one that most people are just thought that they like. I can only control it with diet, and I'm here to say there are lots of things that we can do to help manage the symptoms without cutting out carbs and sugar.
If you do this ultrasound, what are you looking at? Is because it's polycystic. What does it look like?
This is a great question. So what we know is there's lots of different technicalities of like the cyst size and everything. But if you just saw the actual ovary on the ultrasound, what you would see is something that looked like a string of pearls. And that was part of how it was first discovered, and like why they named it PCOS is because it had this string of pearl kind of appearance. And, you know, when I went through lots of fertility treatments, so I can remember getting monitoring in my cycles, and the doctor or the nurse would say like, oh, this is the follicle that's going to be dominant, or there maybe it was more than one. But someone with PCOS has many immature follicles, and that just shows up kind of around the edges of the ovary like a string of pearls. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In one of your videos, you mention family history might play an important role. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. So for many people with PCOS, if they have access to like their biological kind of family history, they may see there's going to be other people probably with PCOS, whether they know it or not, because 70% of people with PCOS don't ever get diagnosed. So like keep that in mind. And so sometimes you have to kind of like play like mystery, like let me see what's happening with my family tree. Like you may have had a couple aunts in your family who are super maternal but never had children, and you're like, why didn't they have kids? And they were like, oh, we just weren't able to have children. There's a lot of connection genetically with PCOS and diabetes. So you'll see, especially on the father side, lots of type 2 diabetes. And there's still a lot of mystery. Again, I don't know in Canada what the funding is like for you all, but in the US, like PCOS is just not something that's researched, especially like the things outside of the reproductive side of it. And I mean, we can go down there's a lot of reasons why I think that happens, but there just isn't a lot of information yet. But there's some research that's kind of trying to put that together. But if you have a family history of diabetes, if you have a family history of infertility, there's a high likelihood that it's just been passed down to you.
Yeah. So what are the hard truths? One of them we've spoken about is through midlife, it actually doesn't go away. One of them that you mentioned, which is tough, is that we need to remember that it's not our fault.
Yes.
You mentioned that.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to bring it up if you didn't. So many people are led to believe that they caused it or they're the reason it's not getting better. Yeah. And lifestyle interventions, like when we read the evidence-based guidelines for PCOS care, they put them out every 5 years. They being the researchers always talk about lifestyle interventions are the primary way to treat PCOS. And that same research, when it looks at all the studies on PCOS interventions and lifestyle, they have not found a diet intervention yet that helps most people with PCOS actually improve health. Like they don't have one yet. And yet they still recommend it. It's kind of backwards to me. I'm like, why can't we just help people feel better instead of like continually telling them to cut out random food groups that have no scientific basis? And so I think what kind of comes along with that is many people are led to believe that if they just try hard enough, they can cure it. And I think there's also a lot of people, we've talked about social media a little bit. I'm not on Instagram, but I'm on TikTok. And I see on TikTok all the time people talking about curing their PCOS. And I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes. You did not cure it. You may have found a way to help some of the symptoms not be as intense. And also, if you're 25 with PCOS versus 50 with PCOS, it's going to be much different. Like the longer you live with PCOS, just like any other chronic condition, it's going to get worse. Like your symptoms are going to be more intense. And if you think like, oh, I'm so bad, I haven't been able to fix my diet in order to help my PCOS symptoms, I hope you can like pause that kind of like shame and blame that you're putting on yourself, because you haven't been given an intervention that actually is scientifically sound. And it's like so multifaceted. Like this is a condition that like a stressful environment is going to make it worse. Having all these different like unresearched sides of PCOS, like there's lots of kind of co-occurring conditions that happen with PCOS, like diabetes, there's the cystic acne, the infertility, like all these different parts that we also don't have interventions for that make it so hard. Yeah. So you're doing the best you can. Anyone listening to this with PCOS, you are doing the best you can, and you deserve more tools, basically, right?
Thank you for that. What are the symptoms of it? You spoke about a few. Infertility as one of them. What are the other symptoms that somebody could be having?
So the symptoms I think are really important because, we talked about the diagnostic criteria,
yes.
But I mean, I don't think we walk around thinking in those terms. But as a dietitian, I started to hear these common themes. And one was these intense, and when I say intense, I don't mean I want a hankering for those Kit Kats, but like a primal craving, like I'm going to die if I don't eat this whole plate of brownies, like craving for carbs and sugar. So if you have that, that's a really common symptom. And along with that is painful fatigue. Now, I'm a mom of two. They're older now, so I finally get good sleep. But I've been exhausted in my lifetime, but I don't think I've ever had as much fatigue as my clients with PCOS have described. So that's the other thing, is just like this really painful kind of fatigue. And along with that, issues with sleep disorders. For many people with PCOS, they do also experience a very rapid weight gain, especially in their 20s. It's kind of like the stereotypical kind of classic experience. And for many people, it's around when they leave home, whether they're just moving out of their house that they grew up in for the first time, or they're going to college. And for many people, it's like a 50 to 100 pound weight gain really quickly over a year or two. And this is something that is not from like a food thing. It's because the onset of symptoms and the hormonal kind of dysregulation is just happening also because it's the end of puberty, and it just starts to quickly happen. So if you are like, I am eating the same Weight Watchers points as my friend and I'm gaining weight, and they're losing weight, what's happening? It could be PCOS, you know, it could be this hormonal condition.
And it's not the freshman 15. That's what the kids coin it here.
Yes,
you know,
same in the
15.
US. Yes,
Really?
and
Yeah.
yes, and
Wow.
the freshman 15 is always this thing I used to work with in the college student area, and like what we know is like 7 to 14 pound weight gain is normal for the end of for the end of puberty rather. So it's kind of like funny that like this freshman 15, oh yeah, you're just finishing puberty. Thanks.
So sad, because if it is PCOS, this is a different thing that we need to be looking at. Or,
And if you
know,
just try to diet it away, you're really taking away an anthropometric measure of like, oh, my body's trying to tell me something. Like, and what's happening in those moments is insulin levels are just surging. And it's not because, again, you ate the wrong thing. It's because of insulin receptors have been damaged, or there's just like something that's not exactly connecting. And if we want to get into the weeds of it, we can. But like those receptors then just because they're not actually able to get the insulin to open the cell door for energy, the body just makes more and more and more insulin. And insulin, some people call insulin a growth hormone. It just leads the body then to save weight because it's like, oh crap, we're going through some kind of starvation. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I like to get into the weeds of it.
I love a weedy thing.
Yes. I think the people that listen to this and they thinking, oh my gosh, do I have PCOS? They want to know, okay, I have these symptoms. Is it what it is? Now, you've mentioned a few of those symptoms. I think maybe you've covered all of them. Is there anything else that we missed?
There's a few other ones. I didn't talk about the androgens, the high circulating androgens kind of symptoms. So if you have more facial hair than you think is typical for you and your friends, you know, or you're losing hair on your head, like androgenic alopecia, or you have really painful large acne that's like a cystic acne, those are all coming from high testosterone or other androgens. And so that's another sign of PCOS.
Okay. Now we have kind of that. I'm like, okay, I have 3 out of 8 of those or 4 out of those. Then I go to my doctor and I'm like, listen, I think I might have this. I would like you to test for it, or what do you think? What do they then do? They're going to do an ultrasound? What is
you
the
don't
next
have
step?
to do an ultrasound, because if someone has irregular or absent periods and has signs of high androgens, then that's enough. Like a doctor could diagnose it without even doing any blood tests. And it may be good to get a baseline anyway, though. Like I get a baseline androgen level, I think is always important. But yeah, you don't have to get blood drawn to get diagnosed.
Okay. And then what are generally the next steps? You go do this. Oh my gosh, I have a diagnosis. Possibly I'm going through this thing. I mean, we could talk for hours, but if, you know, somebody's sitting there, they're feeling like they have to grieve their body. They're sad. They're like, oh my gosh, I have this thing for life. What are your suggestions from here going forward?
So I love this question because about a year ago, I got a call from a college friend of mine whose college-age daughter just got diagnosed with PCOS. And so she's like, what do I do? And I was like, let's get her on the phone. We're going to have a Zoom call. And what I told this child is what I would tell, and I said child, I mean, this was an adult, but anyone newly diagnosed with PCOS, there's a few things I want everyone to know. Learn how to make sure you're eating enough. Like you don't want to skip meals. You don't want to get sucked into like the restrictive mode, because all that does for PCOS is make insulin and inflammation worse long term. In the short term, it may impact things differently, but in the long term, it's going to make it worse. And so if from the get-go in your 20s and 30s, if you can find a way to set boundaries to make sure you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks if you need them, and then also setting boundaries so you get enough rest throughout the day. Having PCOS means you probably need more rest. So protect that at all costs. And then the other thing is to consider supplementing with something called inositol. So inositol is a supplement that is classified in the B vitamin category. And as humans, we know of 9 different inositols that we have. 2 in particular have been identified that could be defective or deficient for people with PCOS. And one of inositol's roles is it repairs insulin receptors. So I was talking to you earlier about that. I was like, if you want to get in the weeds, we can talk about this. We're in the weeds now.
Let's go. Let's go.
And so what I told my friend's child was like, taking inositol now is something that can help make sure that your body like making insulin is not going to be overworked, that you're not going to have a lifetime exposure to high insulin levels, which also helps with your lifetime exposure to high androgen levels, because insulin and the testosterone, they like to hang out together. So if one is high, the other one goes high, and vice versa. And so inositol is something that a lot of people in PCOS circles already know about it, but they don't really understand why they're taking it. So I think everyone should know why. And that's because of the insulin receptor repair. And keep in mind with PCOS, your amount of insulin that your body is releasing is so much more than people with diabetes. So much so that a lot of times, this is kind of like a bonus, but like, I think everyone should know this too with PCOS, because doctors will be like, well, I took your A1C and it's normal, so you don't have high insulin levels. And I'm always like, nope, that's not right. Because with PCOS, you have so much insulin. Like, it's so much more than anybody else without PCOS that your A1C is normal, because it eventually compensates. Like, it eventually brings the glucose into the cell for energy, but just takes so long and takes so much insulin. And there's other tests that you can get drawn that are better. And having PCOS, we know that 75%, at least 75% of people with PCOS have high insulin levels. And figuring out how to keep that lower, along with lower inflammation, is like, that's going to be your golden ticket for the rest of your life. Like, and if you notice like those cravings come back or that painful fatigue, that's when you know those things are happening again. And it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It just means you have a chronic condition. So it's like time to add a new tool. You may need more inositol or a medication or something like that. So
that inositol, is that over the counter, or do you need a prescription for it?
No, it's over the counter in the US and Canada. And it's something that it's harder to come by in other countries, but in the US and Canada, it's pretty easy to get a hold of. But just keep in mind, there are two types of inositols that are really important for PCOS, and you want them in the right ratio. It's like this is where it gets really technical, and I can send you a blog post that has like all the details if it's helpful for you and the listener. Yes. In case the listener's like, what is it? It's at julieduffydillon.com/inositol. And so with that being said, you want a 40-to-1 ratio of myo to dechiro-inositol. This is why I had to take biochemistry, because I had to be able to say those words.
You lost me.
Me too. I always say I loved biochemistry so much I took it twice. I know you get what it means there. But anyway, with that all being said, you also have to take the right amount. So many companies are selling inositol, and they're not labeling which type it is, and they're not saying the right amount. So you need 2,050 milligrams of these two different types of inositol twice a day with PCOS. So someone with PCOS, new diagnosis, talk to your doctor about taking inositol. I mean, I'm a dietitian, but I'm not like your dietitian, right? I'm just its dietitian on a podcast right now. So like, make sure you check with your actual in-person healthcare provider. But it's something that I do encourage everybody with PCOS to take.
Oh, thank you for the bonus.
Yeah.
Thank you for those tips. That's amazing. I think it's going to be so helpful for so many people.
I hope so. Yes.
Great. I've got another burning question, because I heard somebody ask this the other day, all my daughter's friends. Being on birth control for a long time, does it cause PCOS?
Ooh, I love it. They're having this conversation.
I know, right? The girls are.
I love it. Yes.
This new generation of kids, it's like, we want to know what's going on. We want to know what's happening.
Exactly. I have a 17-year-old, and yes, same. I'm like, I love that you all are having this conversation. So here's the thing. PCOS, because of its high androgens and irregular or painful periods that come with it, birth control is a really common intervention. And sometimes people are given this intervention when they have painful periods or regular periods, or they just need birth control, right? Before they get diagnosed. Because a lot of the symptoms of PCOS can start to happen in early puberty, but really it's not until about 5 to 8 years after starting a cycle that you can get diagnosed with PCOS adequately. There's definitely people who earlier on were like, yeah, for sure you have it. But it can just take a while to sort itself out because of how common irregular periods are. But with that being said, people are often given this medication as the first intervention. And then when they decide they want to come off it for whatever reason, all of a sudden they'll have all these symptoms, including that rapid weight gain, excess body hair, cystic acne, irregular periods, feeling awful, lots of cravings, and it'll feel like overnight. And that's because birth control, it does treat a lot of the symptoms of PCOS. It lowers androgens and it helps the ovulation to be in a cycle that where you're not going to have heavy periods, but you'll still have a regular cycle. So with that being said, if someone has PCOS and they're on the pill and they know eventually they want to come off of it, I encourage people to try, if they can, to delay coming off the pill for 3 to 6 months and make sure they have all their ducks in a row. Like they're taking the Inositol at the full strength. They're eating enough. They're sleeping well. They have everything that they need set up. So then when they do come off the pill, there won't be as much of an all or nothing effect. There is a caveat with it though. Long-term use of the pill, newer research has shown has been found to increase insulin levels even more. So it can treat it while you're taking it. And I mean, I feel like this is very individual, right? Like for some people, they don't want to use medication. I have a friend, she doesn't even like taking Tylenol. And unfortunately, she got cancer in her 30s. And she's like, I don't want to do chemo. And we're like, you're doing the chemo. And so we're like, we're not going to give you a choice. You're doing the chemo. And for some people, medications are no big deal. But yet, with PCOS, taking the pill is the difference between having periods that are like not a big deal or having periods where you can't go to work, you know? And so, and also it's birth control in the United States. We need that right now. So anyway, I feel like it's a really important decision that you may have to like make a pro-con chart. But yeah, just keep in mind, it may help right now, but then later on it may be connected to even higher insulin levels.
That's good advice. Circling back to PCOS being part of your life, how does this play into perimenopause, menopause? Big question for
I
our audience
love
here.
this question so much because when you go through menopause with PCOS, when you're going through perimenopause, it may be a little bit different than your peers. And again, you still have PCOS, I'm sorry to tell you. But what we do know is that most people with PCOS go through menopause 2 or 3 years later than people without PCOS. And you know how estrogen starts to dip as we're going through perimenopause and through menopause. There's a time period for people with PCOS where their estrogen levels, who have always been high, like that's one of the classic experiences with PCOS is a lot higher estrogen levels, where estrogen normalizes. And so cycles will be like normal. Fertility will be increased. So watch out. Unless you want to have a baby at 45 or 50. I don't know. Like,
No. Hello.
No, please no. So just know that happens. And there are some differences too. Like when we look at the very little amount of research on menopause and life with PCOS, we do know that people with PCOS typically have a couple things that are in a more out of range that compared to people without PCOS. So what we know with PCOS is that people will often have higher triglyceride levels. So triglycerides are a part of like the cholesterol panel that your doctor may get. And high triglycerides are really common with PCOS anyway, because of how they're tightly connected to blood sugar. And so you may have higher triglycerides, and then also the risk of a mood disorder through perimenopause and menopause is higher when you have PCOS compared to without. But then once you go through menopause and you have your last cycle, it's been over a year, all of those things start to be the same as your friends without PCOS. The only exception is blood sugar and triglycerides. Those are still going to be, like, according to research, going to be higher compared to everybody else. And so the way that I see this when I would talk to clients in midlife with PCOS is these were folks who were eating, I mean, I tell you, like they were eating so many fruits and vegetables, so much fiber and moving their body every day. But then they were like, why am I gaining so much weight? Why do I have no energy? Why and it's because of the higher insulin that is still continuing to go up after this lifetime of higher insulin and also higher androgens. And so yeah, you may find that you have more cravings, you're more fatigued, and you may gain more weight than your peers without PCOS. And that's kind of like the classic experience. Now, I don't have like a way to predict like, oh, if you do this, you won't gain as much weight or whatever, but like, because that's just impossible to predict. But I do know making sure you eat enough, doing some of these supplements, protecting your sleep. Those are all things that can like help you to be able to, help blood sugar and insulin and those triglycerides as much as possible. And yeah, I mean, it's different. And we also, again, we have so little research about it to even know much more than that.
I feel sad. It's like perimenopause is such a thing to contend with. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I find it so interesting that actually those estrogen levels are really high, but then they start to normalize, yay, finally, with everybody else. So cool. So thanks so much for that. That was really interesting. I think for me, we've spoken for quite some time. I think we need to do a more of a deep dive into many other things. But I want to quickly ask, and for the audience, tell us about your podcast and your book. Yeah. It's called Find the Food Voice. Tell us about that.
Yes. So Find Your Food Voice is my podcast and book. My podcast is almost 10 years old, if you can believe that. I mean, I guess I was 40 when I started it. So that's what's so interesting to me. I'm like, oh, what that 40-year-old didn't know yet.
With you.
Yes.
Right on.
Yes. But it's for people with PCOS and people without PCOS. So it's anyone with a complicated history with food who is wanting to like try a different way to recover from their eating disorder or just doesn't want to diet anymore. And what makes my podcast and my book unique is I have listeners who write in and they write a letter to food and, unpacking what's complicated, and me and sometimes a guest, we help to just provide direction. And, I don't do one-on-one work with clients anymore, but one thing I do is a lot of training of clinicians. And it's really hard for clinicians, especially when they're like still in school, to be able to know what it's like in the room with a clinician when like, how do you actually help someone with a relationship with food? And I'm like, just listen to my podcast, listen to a letter episode. You will hear what it's like in those offices. And so, if you're like, I just need to hear stories, I need to hear different kind of advice, then this is what my book and my podcast are all about.
It's so nice to hear stories. We want to go, I can relate to that.
Yes.
And then,
100%.
Coming from an expert like yourself, I think that is vital. So please, I'll put all of that into the show notes and into the YouTube description. So get on to that. Julie, thank you so much for your insightful and seriously important conversation. We covered everything from the core of PCOS, Kit Kats, a sponsorship with Kit Kat.
Bring it, Kit Kat. Come on.
Exactly. And just interesting about stuff that I didn't know about PCOS at all. So I just think it's so awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
It was great. Listen, to all of you that are listening, please hit like, subscribe, listen to the podcast. It's on audio wherever you listen to your podcasts. It's good to have you here. If you have burning questions, please DM me, send it to me. I'll try and bring the people. Let's answer the questions.